Okay, it looks like we're good. So hello folks. For once I finally got this screen diggity-doo thing working on my computer, and I don't have to go buy a new computer apparently. It's the information that I have to share with everyone, and I apologize if it happens to be slightly boring. I don't want to come across as one of those scientific sort of people that sits in front of a classroom and just goes yah, yah, yah for hours on end, right? I do want to share all of my thoughts about how the Earth operates, and I can go ahead and start doing that with my Word document where I started writing the book. And I actually sound better when I write than when I speak. So this is what we're going to do, and I'm likely to deviate quite less. I'm going to go ahead and cover the abstract, and that's what this particular show is all going to be about, is my abstract that kind of ties in everything in its perspective. The Earth is far more dynamic than we've ever given it credit of being before. So much more dynamic. It isn't dynamic in the sense of continents behaving like clouds going through the sky that we're not exactly sure how that's happening. Actually, it's quite easy to understand when we see how the different flows of energy come together and work. Come together. I can't think of the word. I lost it. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my abstract. So I'm going to go down here. I'm looking down to my little... There, yeah, you see what I'm looking at now. Do follow my mouse if you'd like to. So basically this is the story of the Earth, and the title of this book was supposed to be The Consequence of a Greater Force, a theoretical approach to the story of Earth. I'll try not to tangle my tongue here too much. And I wrote it initially, or at least began writing it in June 2, 2019. So in my abstract, I'm just going to read it. Hopefully it's not too boring. Earth. A history almost completely erased by time, but with stories seemingly unrealistic. A world with epics of human history, inexplicable and gone forever. Or, is the history really gone forever? The story of this Earth begins with a dynamic cosmos that functions as the epitome of renewable energy. A cosmos teeming with life in multiple dimensions and classes of universes. A cosmos familiar with speeds greater than that of light. A cosmos where time travel is not only possible, but exists. A mechanical cosmos that functions like a well-maintained engine driving the clockworks of an ever-present existence. Life as we know it is not life as it is. We have only been able to see what our environment has required of our bodies to survive. We have physically adjusted through our lives on this Earth. Stories of science fiction drive our curiosities into the futures of our imaginations. The truth is, these imaginative futures derive from our ability to begin understanding the unknown until we make it known. Please excuse my dogs and Doodle. Dogs, quiet. Boomer was playing with his toy. I know I said I wasn't going to sidetrack, but Boomer was playing with his toy, and of course, Doodle had to start arguing with Boomer's toy because it was squeaking, so she thought it was a bird. Yeah, whatever. Hopefully, though, Doodle's happy right now. As long as she's happy, I'm happy. Okay, going to the next paragraph, folks. Our universe is just like the cosmos. Our universe began from an explosive origin that set it into a semi-perpetual existence. Our universe is also like a well-maintained engine, driven by a universal four-dimensional vortex. This universal four-dimensional vortex is surrounded by a hub of bright terrestrial stellar objects, BTSOs, or I like to call them BITSOs. For example, white holes. So that's what a BITSO is. Terrestrial stellar objects include white holes and black holes. They put them into one category, and we'll talk about that. I've already delved into it in my other videos anyway, so you have a pretty good idea what it is I'm talking about. These white holes consume the highest volume of stellar subjects, firing gamma-ray bursts, GRBs, at near-cyclic intervals. The white hole hub, the WHO, like a distributor cap on the engine of an automobile, fires GRBs that assist in the continued rotation of the universe. The Hutu base GRBs, that is, GRBs fired from the south poles, if you will, of the BITSOs, drive the rotational direction of the universe. In this universe, oh my bad, this universe does not just expand. This universe expands before it dissipates and collapses. This universe does not just, oh gosh, excuse me. I forgot where I was. Dissipation and collapse occur simultaneously. This universe is a four-dimensional hurricane, a universal hurricane possessing counter-rotating jet streams. A hurricane whose base is an anti-hurricane. A single hurricane that is essentially two hurricanes bound together by one common base, meeting at the center of the lenticular superstructure. Okay, I'm putting my racquetball game face on now. The Milky Way galaxy, MOG, another structure that functions like a well-maintained engine, is driven by three black holes, BHs. The parent black hole, PBH, at the center of the MOG rotates in a prograde direction. The PBH's prograde direction of rotation is driven by a universal jet stream as the MOG's flight path takes it down the corridor. The sibling BHs 1 and 2 rotate in retrograde directions, driving the overall rotational direction of the galaxy. And as we've discussed before, the PBH rotates in a clockwise manner, right? And because its SMEGAs are going around it clockwise, they act like gears, and so the sibling BHs end up rotating in opposite directions, as they would if they were really cogs. Supermassive electromagnetic gravity waves, SMEGAs, emitting out from the siblings BHs 1 and 2, sweep and rotate the MOG's galactic subjects, including our solar system. In this galaxy, the SMEGAs bring an electromagnetic gravitational riptide that sets the sun into its solar maximum every 11 years. The SMEGAs have a radial interval of 11 years at the distance the solar system lies beyond BH1. Rolling down to the next paragraph. The sun rotates in a prograde direction. The sun's electromagnetic gravity waves, EGAs, sweep the solar system subjects around the sun like a carousel. Solar wind pressure is stronger than the EGAs and behaves like a solid base over which the solar system subjects roll. This rolling base is strongest along the solar system plane and weakens as the EGAs taper toward the outer lying realm of the solar system disk. Like the MOG, the solar system also has a bulge at the center. This bulge at the center of the solar system is formed by the EGAs. As the solar system subjects reach their orbital perihelion, they may rise or fall up or down around the sun's EGA bulge depending on their ecliptic. Solar system subject orbits are not likely to be perfect ecliptic orbits, but ecliptic orbits that bend as the subjects come closer to the sun, forming a spatial, quote-unquote, ducktail orbit. This is just theoretical, of course. I don't think that anything is ever perfect. In the very same way that we know that the Earth has a precession, the Sun has a precession, guess what? The solar system has a precession. In addition to a solar system having a precession, guess what? The galaxy has a precession. Now that we know that the galaxy has a precession, and we assume that the universe is more like a hurricane with a universal eye, it has a precession as well. Nothing ever flies perfectly. It's always out of balance, sometimes more than others. Go on to the next paragraph. Every so often, this Earth feels the impact of an extra-galactic GRB. Now we're going outside the galaxy, right? The extra-galactic GRB is emitted from the universal center. The universal center, excuse me, I had to scratch my nose. The universal center lying someplace near or beyond the Indus constellation. This GRB is the Indus GRB. The Indus GRB is near-cyclic as its originator is a BITSO. The Indus GRB is fired at a rate consummate of the BITSO's rate of stellar feed at the center of the universe. The Indus GRB may not necessarily be fired from a single originator, but from each BITSO found at the Hutu as they rotate around the eye of the universe. And we're just going to throw something out there based on the North Banda Basin's pentagonal core and the South Pole of Jupiter's pentagonal core. We're going to assume that our universe has a pentagonal core. Therefore, meaning that we probably have 5 BITSOs. And these BITSOs are going to be mega massive in relation to anything we have ever seen before. All right. Now I got to find my place now. So I'm looking for my place. The Indus GRB is near cyclic as its originator is a BITSO. The Indus GRB is fired at a rate consummate of the BITSO's rate of stellar feed at the center of the universe. The Indus GRB may not necessarily be fired from a single originator, but from each BITSO found at the Hutu as they rotate around the eye of the universe. These GRB rates of fire become pulsating repetitious frequencies, PRFs. I did not make up that term. That is actually a military term for lasers. So not all of these acronyms are mine. Darn. The Indus GRB is an electromagnetic flux density beam of energy that acts the same as light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, laser, and a riptide on an ocean's shore. In other words, motional or passing gravitational fields behave like riptides as they approach and depart universal victims or subjects. Victims in the case of GRBs, and subjects in the case of galactic and stellar formations. The Indus GRB riptide property is generated from its own linear rotational vortex as it passes along a specific trajectory through space. I also mentioned that the gravitational effects of surrounding cosmological entities while the GRB is passing through them may even begin to appear over a certain distance, a very large certain distance, kind of like a pachinko machine as it's bounced between or pulled between different influencing forces of gravitational pull. Its trajectory might not necessarily be straight. All right, now we're going to go back to where I was. All right, now, this particular GRB's riptide property pulled plasma up to 0.2, I measured it, astronomical units from the sun's corona in 2010 as it approached and passed by. Excuse me for just 1 minute. I seem to have an eyelash in my eye. Stupid eye. All right. The sun's plasma is pulled up to 0.2 astronomical units from the sun's corona, beginning on one side of the sun and sweeping all the way across an entire hemisphere before being released. That's not something I just made up. That is actually right after our scientists set the SDO, Solar Dynamic Observatory, into its orbit around the Earth, basically doing a figure 8 over the equator of the Earth, just to watch the sun and photograph it and take videos. One of the videos captured this very moment of this plasma being pulled from the sun. And then another part of it, you see like a global, they refer to it as a global tsunami wrapping around the sun. Very impressive. The sun did not do that on its own. It was from an external force. That's my whole point. Okay. That wasn't the only thing that was affected either. Jupiter was also affected in 2010. We'll talk about that later, I guess. Next paragraph. When a hemispheric coronal mass vacuum, I decided to call it that just today, is pulled, or an HCMV, is pulled from the sun, the Earth can swell as it is heated up by external microwave forces of energy. When the Earth swells, its asthenosphere, lithosphere, and crust are all spread outward and thinned. Planets in general are like cosmological sponges, soaking up and collecting cosmological condensation. When the Earth swells, it sweats, just like we do when we go to the gym. Our muscles start to expand, we get that blood flowing, and as our muscles expand from the extra blood, our skin sort of gets, thin and tight, and then we start looking really good, right? We got that six-pack going. Not me, just somebody else. And things like that, right? So, as you notice, as soon as I said gym, the dogs got really quiet. They really like the gym. They like going to the gym. No, I don't do that anymore. So, along with flash melts and global geysers, the Earth will go under extreme drought that precedes the aforementioned. Famine from drought and flood will lead to pestilence. That sounds kind of familiar. Almost biblical. And finally, the whole Earth could theoretically flood before cooling and absorbing the water back into its cavities or aquifers, right? The more, I had to scratch my nose, don't bother me. Okay, now we're good. The more the Earth swells, the inner, well, it is inner. Let me read that again. The more the Earth swells, the thinner its crust becomes. When the Earth's crust thins, its equatorial vortices become active throughout its planetary dermis. Dermis. Like pouring a thick layer of graham cracker crumbs over the top of cream cheese in the mixing bowl of a blender, mom's blender, the active equatorial vortices will begin to mix the Earth's crustal surface. If left alone and mixing the Earth's crustal surface for too long, we won't have any mountains left. It'll all get smooth, just like those cookies, right? That cookie batter. With maybe just a few chocolate chips left. All right. India, Spain, and Central America will further be drawn into their pointed shapes before being destroyed by induction, or through induction, and extrusion on the opposite side of the vertical tangents. Next paragraph. Not to worry, however frightening these circumstances may be and affect us, they are not the worst. There are far more worse things, right? Our greatest worries should lie in the effects of catastrophic asteroid impacts. Asteroid impacts that may have essentially sent humanity back in time and development. The Earth was home to beings that built massive, megalithic structures possibly designed to lock out all but essential creatures. The Earth's inhabitants, while locking out allosaurs and the like, could have corralled and trained Quetzalcoatl's for controlled flight. You can see how it's spelled right there. Just look at that. Right. So then Google it. It'll be Googled. Googleable. I know this seems to be totally science fiction, but what if? Riding a flying dinosaur isn't all that impossible to imagine, knowing that we ride horses and camels, is it? I think it's well within our ability. With few industrial resources for major production or of advanced technologies, Earth inhabitants could have used these creatures for transportation, riding them as people ride horses today. These Earth inhabitants would have mounted their flying creatures atop the terraces of their megalithic stone cities, safe from feral, meat-eating dinosaurs roaming the deep forest grounds below the cities. Kind of like Terra Nova. I used to live on Terra Nova. Not the same Terra Nova. All right. We didn't build these megalithic stone structures. It's not in our records. So, who did build these megalithic stone structures? We don't know. What about the megalithic stone structures that are found underneath the sea? We have no idea who put those together. And for what purpose were these megalithic stone structures built? Why did they have to be so huge and megalithical? If humanity was born among such flying creatures like this today, we would certainly master them. And where else would our stories of flying on dragons come from, right? The logical picture of Earth's early inhabitants suggests they did not originate on Earth. No one would have been able to manufacture advanced technologies worldwide on a planet infested with dinosaurs. Okay, I'm going to the next paragraph, a little bit more down to Earth. The Earth has been impacted by asteroids that have left blast bow waves, B2Ws, the size of countries, with blast rings of radii reaching over 1 million meters. This is where I lose the scientific community. They don't believe it yet. When I start showing the graphics, and I'm very serious at this point, I will show the graphics. When I do, we'll better understand exactly what it is I'm talking about and how common it occurred and will occur. It's perpetual. It's going to happen. And Apophis might not be our worst concern. Depends. Apparently, our worst impactor was approximately 8.3 kilometers, I had to think about it for a second, kilometers in diameter. That's a big rock. And that one had a huge impact on the Earth. I'll cover that later. Okay. Now, the Earth possesses equatorial vortices that are activated by worldwide liquefaction caused from catastrophic asteroid impacts, in addition to swelling from the rise of heat. These catastrophic asteroid impacts not only activate the equatorial vortices, but their shock waves release tectonic pressure throughout the Earth's surface, and in some instances, send ripping whip shock vanes, WSVs, that travel across the seafloor up to 1 million meters distance. Yes, I measured it. The WSVs sever bedrock like a knife cuts butter and shift 16 kilometers of mountain range, literally, up to 8 kilometers before settling. So basically this straight as an arrow, well, arrows aren't straight, this straight as a straight edge rip of rifting material in the Earth's surface was whipped like a rope is snapped and whipped by someone waving it up and down, cracking at the end. And as it cracked at the end, on its path, on this perfectly straight edge path of its distance of 1 million meters, it comes to a point where it hits a mountain range, a subterranean mountain range, and it severs that mountain range. So the mountain range is like, here's the direction of the path, and the mountain range is crossing that path like this, horizontally. And it just cuts right through that mountain range and goes, Yeah, just like that, right? Watch my face. 800 kilometers distance. Whew. You know what I'm going to do later on? I'm going to go ahead and take the graphics out of that. I'm going to cut that little piece of the Earth out, and I'm going to put it over by Mount Rainier, so that we can get a real good idea of just how big that shift was. Okay? These are the things that we got to think about, and we're going to find out a little bit more about how this works in just a second here. These WSVs create cracks in the Earth's crust radially. These radial cracks, that is, subterranean radial rift lines, SURLs, I made that up, occur when superhot material, for example, asteroids, meteors, enter the Earth's atmosphere, heating up as they descend into the oceanic depths. Hopefully I spelled that right, descend. I get that, I keep getting confused between descend and descent, that kind of thing. When the impactors explode, the heat they generate shocks the ocean floor like pouring ice-cold water onto a hot glass. Going to the next paragraph. Whoops. Too far. And then, the potential energy released from the Earth's tectonic pressure points sends shock waves in the form of energy that is transferred at a colossal rate of speed. The energy from these shock waves travel through the atmosphere. I'm sorry. The energy from these shock waves travel through the asthenosphere. I'm not that familiar with the asthenosphere, so atmosphere just automatically popped in there as soon as I saw the letter A. Beneath the lithospheric and continental foundations, through, around, and underneath the anti-topography, until rising and emerging as 29,500 foot high, work with me here, high semi-molten waves of lava. Let me save my hoodly-gag it. All right, there it goes. That's right. It's telling me my grammar stinks, so I'll go back and fix the grammar later. But you guys got the general idea, right? When we think about, we already talked about, the way that our topography is above the Earth's surface that we see it, you have like so much more mass similar to that underneath of it, just like you do in the difference between the iceberg that floats above the water and the iceberg that is submerged beneath the water. Same business, right? Okay, going down the ladder, Googie. All right. A colossal energy that causes a planetary continental landslide extending from the North Pole spirally down toward the equator. The lithosphere and crust are carried away by the underlying shock flow of the asthenospheric tsunamis. The Earth then bears an Olympus Mons all its own. The Earth forms the Taklamakan volcanic caldera. Taking the force of shock from an asthenospheric tsunami, the Taklamakan supermassive volcano erupts. The lava flowing from the Taklamakan supermassive volcano runs east of the Himalayas and then south into Indonesia. Simultaneously, the lava flows west from the Taklamakan supermassive volcano into Turkey and parts of Spain. That's right. That's one heck of a lava flow there, folks. At the same time, the Taklamakan west lava flow forms a land bridge that separates the Caspian Sea, north of which was once the North Pole at the time of Pangaea's central North Pole coordinate, from the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. So the Caspian Sea was separated from the Persian Gulf and from the Arabian Sea. That's right. It wasn't always a landlocked sea, which is why it is the world's largest landlocked sea. On my last paragraph here, folks, I'm going to go down. I don't want you to read my introduction there yet. All right, so now the catastrophic impactors are the keys to opening Pandora's box. The initial impact results in an explosion that displaces mass volumes of oceanic waters. The blast and displacement create global oceanic tsunamis, followed by asthenospheric tsunamis, a rise in volcanism, earthquakes, worldwide liquefaction, and the ultimate activation of the Earth's gyroscopic vortices that also initiate continental migration. Accelerated continental migration leads to the Earth rotating like a laundry machine out of balance, erratically spinning about until the load is brought under control. Weather systems are sent into chaos as centrifugal force finds no common center. Only EGOS, solar wind pressure, and SMEGOS can calm the Earth back into a state of normalcy. Well, folks, that concludes my abstract for my book, or my journal, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. I'm not a scientist, so I can do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter. Right? I don't have to worry about a scientific career. So, now that we have that covered, please be sure to like and do something else. I'm supposed to do something else. I'm supposed to like and, subscribe. Yeah, that's right. Like and subscribe to my stuff. And here's a sneak peek for what I'm going to talk about someday. I'm going to scroll down my book here really fast. And as I do, I'm going to give you a peek now, I didn't take this picture, mind you. Actually, it's a compilation of many pictures. Right here, we're looking at 4 arrows. And that's the Great Red Spot. Notice how these two are almost completely apart from each other. Follow my mouse. They're up in the northern hemisphere. Look really small compared to what we have on Earth. And then you have these two down here that are almost completely apart from each other on different hemispheres of Jupiter, right? So keep that in mind when we talk about things like the equatorial vortices. Jupiter has a very different structural equatorial vortical mechanism, and probably due to the fact that it's mostly made of gas. So we're going to go